Most religions claim to have the answers about death. They don't just hint at it, they give you vivid detail. Golden gates, reunions with loved ones, eternal joy, or eternal punishment. It's comforting, until you start asking the wrong questions. Because here's the problem. The details change. Across cultures, across centuries, sometimes even inside the same religion. And when you see that, the entire promise starts to unravel. But here's where it gets really interesting. What you were told about death might not just be wrong. It might be stealing something from you right now, while you're still alive. In the next few minutes, we're going to pull apart the biggest myths about death. Where they came from, why they persist, and what happens when you let them go. And if you stick with me, you might walk away with a way of seeing death that's not only more honest, but more freeing than anything you've heard in a sermon. The problem with promises. Religion sells certainty about death, not maybe, not we think, certainty. You're told exactly where you'll go, who you'll see, and what you'll feel. Heaven, hell, paradise, rebirth. Pick your version. It sounds comforting, until you notice something strange. None of these promises agree with each other. One religion says you'll see your family forever. Another says marriage doesn't even exist in the afterlife. Some say you'll remember your life, others say you'll forget it completely. So which is it? If even the rule books can't match, how can they all be right? But here's where it gets more dangerous. These promises aren't just inconsistent, they're impossible to prove. You can't test them, you can't verify them. You just have to believe. And that's fine, until reality steps in. When someone you love dies, and the picture in your head doesn't match the silence you feel, the comfort cracks. Grief turns into doubt. And doubt, in a system built on certainty, feels like betrayal. But here's the twist most people don't think about. When you hand over your curiosity to someone else's story about death, you also hand over your ability to make peace with it yourself. And that's the first thing religion gets wrong. It makes you think you need their promise to face death at all. But as you'll see in the next part, even those promises weren't there in the beginning. In fact, the story of the afterlife has been rewritten more times than you think. A history of shifting stories. Most people think their religion's view of death has always been the same, fixed, eternal, written in stone. It hasn't. Early Judaism? No heaven, no hell, just a shadowy underworld called Sheol. No rewards, no punishments. You died, and that was it. Centuries later, the idea of resurrection appears. Then heaven, then hell, layer after layer, added to the original story. Christianity, Jesus talks about the kingdom of God, but not streets of gold or harps in the clouds. Those details came later, borrowed from Roman and Greek imagery. Islam, its earliest visions of paradise were lush gardens, a powerful promise in a desert culture. Over time, the details expanded, new rewards, new punishments, and just like that, the eternal truth kept changing. Even Hindu and Buddhist ideas of death have evolved. Reincarnation stories shifting from endless cycles to ways of escaping them entirely. So here's the uncomfortable takeaway. Afterlife beliefs don't fall from the sky. They grow, they change, and they change to fit the culture that tells them. Once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it. The promises you've been told about death, they're not timeless, they're updates. And if something eternal needs that many revisions, how eternal is it really? But here's where it gets even harder to ignore. When we stop looking at stories and start looking at actual evidence, everything changes. That's next. Science versus soul. For most religions, death isn't the end. It's a doorway. Your soul passes through and you go somewhere else. It's a beautiful thought. But there's a problem. When scientists go looking for the soul, they can't find it. Not in the brain, not in the body, not anywhere. Every thought you have, every memory, every feeling, it all comes from your brain. Damage the brain, and those things can disappear. If the brain is gone, the person is gone. Near-death experiences? They feel convincing, but they can be recreated in labs. Oxygen loss, certain chemicals, and brain activity during trauma can all produce the same visions. The tunnels, the light, the floating sensation. And here's where it gets really interesting. People from different cultures have completely different afterlife visions. Christians see Jesus, Hindus see Hindu gods, atheists often see nothing at all. Same biology, different stories. That's not proof of another world. That's proof your brain uses what it already knows to make sense of dying. And when you realize that, the soul starts to look less like a passenger leaving the body and more like the body's own light switch. Once it's off, everything stops. But here's the twist most people don't expect. When you accept that, death doesn't get scarier. It gets simpler. And that makes the next chapter, the one about hell, even more important, because fear of hell has shaped how billions of people think about dying, and almost everything you've been told about it is wrong. The moral cost of hell. Hell is the ultimate fear story. Eternal pain, endless punishment, no second chances. And it works. Fear is one of the most powerful motivators humans have. But here's the first thing most people don't know. Hell wasn't always part of the plan. In early Judaism, there was no eternal torture chamber. In the early teachings of Jesus, hell wasn't a lake of fire, it was Gehenna, an actual valley outside Jerusalem where trash and corpses were burned. A real place, not an afterlife. Over centuries, hell grew. It borrowed imagery from Greek mythology, Hades, Tartarus. It picked up flames, demons, torture devices. Artists like Dante filled in the details, and preachers made it worse. Soon, it wasn't just a warning, it was a weapon. And here's the cost nobody talks about. Teaching people to fear eternal torment changes how they live this life. It creates guilt for normal human thoughts. It turns grief into anxiety, wondering if a loved one made it. And it makes kids grow up afraid of the dark, not because of monsters, but because of God. For some, hell is the single biggest reason they stay religious. Not love, not faith, fear. And fear might keep you in line, but it doesn't help you live well. Which leads to another uncomfortable truth. The very things religion says make death less scary can actually make it harder to deal with. That's what we'll uncover next. False comfort, real harm. Heaven sounds like the perfect comfort, a reunion with everyone you've lost. No pain, no fear, no end. And for many, that belief is what gets them through grief. But here's the part no one likes to admit. It can also make things worse. When you believe life continues forever, it's easy to devalue the one you have now. Why fight for justice if they'll get their reward in heaven? Why savor moments if there's always more time later? It can even keep people from healing. Instead of processing loss, you just wait for a reunion that may never come. And if you start doubting that reunion, the grief hits twice as hard. But here's where it gets really strange. This false comfort doesn't just shape your personal life, it shapes entire societies. History is full of leaders who told people to suffer now for a reward later. It's how oppression gets disguised as patience. It's how injustice hides behind faith. When the focus is on the next life, the problems in this one get ignored. That's the real harm. The more you cling to heaven, the easier it is to accept hell on earth. But here's the twist. You can face death without that safety net and still find peace. Some would say you can find more peace. That's where the next chapter takes us. How seeing death without religion doesn't strip life of meaning. It gives it more. The humanist view of death. Most people think the only way to make peace with death is through religion. Without heaven, what's left? A lot, actually. The humanist view starts with this. Death is natural. It's not a punishment. It's not the end of a test. It's the closing chapter in a story you got to write. And here's the twist. Accepting that can make life better. When you know your time is limited, you value it more. Moments matter. People matter. Every "I love you" means something because you can't hit replay. This isn't a new idea. Stoic philosophers taught it thousands of years ago. Buddhists meditate on impermanence. Even some indigenous cultures treat death as a return to nature. No judgment, no fear. And it works. Studies show that people who accept death as part of life often report more happiness and less anxiety than those who cling to the idea of immortality. The humanist view isn't about ignoring grief. It's about grounding it. You mourn, you remember, and then you keep living, fully aware that this is the only round you get. And here's where it gets really interesting. When you stop seeing death as an escape to somewhere better, you stop wasting life waiting for it. You live here, now, and you make it worth it. But this only works if you replace wishful thinking with something solid. So in the next chapter, we'll strip away every story and ask, what do we actually know about death? What we actually know about death. Strip away the sermons, the visions, the promises. What do we actually know? We know death happens to everyone. We know the body stops. We know the brain shuts down. And when that happens, everything we call you, your thoughts, your memories, your awareness, stops too. That's the hard part. But here's the part religion often misses. Just because you stop doesn't mean everything stops. You leave echoes. In the people you've loved, the work you've done, the changes you've made. Your choices ripple out long after you're gone. And for some, that ripple is more real and more important than any promise of heaven. Think about it. If your life is the only one you get, every day is worth more. Every act of kindness has weight. Every connection matters. You don't need eternity to make your life meaningful. You just need to live in a way that matters now. And when you see death that way, it stops being the enemy. It becomes a reminder that this isn't a rehearsal. This is the show. Death without religious myths isn't hopeless. It's honest, and honesty can be freeing. Because when you stop looking for answers that aren't there, you start seeing the value in what is here. This life, these people, this moment. You realize you don't need eternity to make life matter. You just need to live it. So let me ask you, what helped you rethink death and find peace without religion? Was it a book, a personal loss, a moment of clarity? Share it in the comments. Your story might help someone else find theirs. And remember, this is the only life we know we have, so make it full, make it kind, make it yours.